What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview / prediction video, and today, it is that time. It is officially that time. It's the NFL playoffs. It's Lions. It's Commanders for a chance to get back into the NFC Championship game. So let's get it started. Now, as always, before we get into today's video, gotta give a shout out to our sponsor for today's video and for this NFL season. That's BetUS. If you're looking for your sports book, all right, just in time for the playoffs, you found it. It's BetUS. 150% deposit match on your first deposit, 125% on your next two deposits. Use it as your sign-up bonus. When you're signing up, use that code YouTube150 down in the description. It's at the top of the description, YouTube150. Right now, they have the lines out for the game. This has continued to move up. The Lions are now -10 in this matchup. You'll see what my score prediction is at the end of this video. -550. -550 is the money line. That's crazy. They also have the other lines out for the other games. We have a straight up pick 'em for Baltimore Bills. Personally, I'm leaning Baltimore, so just to kind of throw in a side bet here, I'm going to go with a 10-piece on Baltimore. I think Baltimore wins this game, so I'm going to lean Baltimore on the road right now. But if you want to get on the Lions bet for this game, this is the spot to do it. BetUS. Now, let's get to today's video. And welcome ready to the video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're back with another preview / prediction video. Bear with me through this one. I'm excited. Okay, I'm pretty pumped up. I got started on this game very early. We're here. Hopefully this video gets out a little bit sooner. I have a ton of notes. So as always, I'm going to try to condense it and not say too much or do too much in today's video because we'll revisit this. I'll have a live stream before the game. We'll do all those things. We'll hit on anything that I didn't hit on today. But before we get into the actual preview / prediction, I do have to give some injury updates because today was the final day of the practice reports, and we'll go through the Lions side here first. The big one, Kevin Zeitler is expected to miss this game. Lions right guard, who's been fantastic this season. It's a tough time to miss him due to a hamstring injury. So the expectation is Christian Mahogany is going to step in at right guard. They also have KO'd if they had to go that direction. They like Christian Mahogany. He hasn't played a ton of snaps this year. He's looked good in the snaps that he has played, so they're going to lean on the rookie, and it's an excellent opportunity, right? This could be a part of the future going forward as a starter. That's on the table. I like KO'd as well, so if it wasn't going well and we had to go to KO'd, I think we'd be fine. Also, Rakestraw is officially questionable for this game, right? He's missed some time, but this would give us real depth back at the cornerback position. So I don't know that he'll actually be available for this game, but right now he's questionable. It's on the table. Dave Montgomery is also set to play in this game. He's going to be back. I expect him to be taking some snaps in this game, getting some touches in this game, and it's going to be great to have Monty back. I thought we missed him against Minnesota a lot early in that game. I thought we missed him on pass downs a lot. Super happy for him that he's able to play like this. And then also Pat O'Connor is set to miss this game, which I think is a very underrated missing piece for this game because he just had so much flexibility. The guy plays nose tackle for us. He plays defensive end, defensive tackle. He plays everywhere for us. The flexibility that the Lions lose without Pat O'Connor is massive, and this guy brings a real redeeming skill set to the table, and he's gotten better and better. So that's a really tough depth loss to not have Pat O'Connor in this spot just because of how much flexibility he offers everybody else. So again, the Lions are going to be leaning on DJ Reader and Levi Onwuzurike. Probably a little bit more Levi on the interior in a game like this. Maybe a guy like Chris Smith comes up again, and that's what the Lions are going to be leaning on in the interior. So with that being said, on the Commander side of things, the big one is that Bobby Wagner returned to practice. He's expected to play in this game, who's been fantastic this season. However, Jordan McGee, one of their depth pieces that has, at least in recent weeks, kind of played as like the third linebacker when they went to some base package, like against Philly. I think just because of how Philly plays stylistically, they tend to play a lot of nickel, but they do have a little bit of base package thrown in there, and Jordan McGee handled some of that role a little bit. So if the Lions can get them base package looks, they wouldn't have Jordan McGee for those spots. So it could be interesting to see what the adjustment is there. But they'll probably play a lot of nickel. Let's dive right into it, and stay tuned for the end where I give my score prediction for this game. This talk recently has been about Jayden Daniels, and I think rightfully so. They're on a hot winning streak. They're winning at the end of games. He's calm, he's poised, he's accurate. He's a rookie. I understand why he's getting all the conversation. I think all of those things are absolutely true about him. Some of the throws that he's made when blitzed, when hurried, that he just delivers absolute dimes. And he's very decisive, quick making decisions. It's just like, I'm just going to get the ball out. That's the coverage I got. I'm putting the ball out there, going to give my guy a chance. And because of that, he's not overthinking seemingly anything. So sometimes some of those blitz feel completely negated because he's going to put the ball up anyway. And he just eats shots, man. This guy will eat shots and take big shots, but he gets right back up and he's playing for him. So Jayden Daniels has been fantastic. But I think what's another interesting storyline is, like, Aaron Glenn's seen this kind of offense before. Like, he had faced Cliff Kingsbury, Arizona Cardinals in 2021, his first year here as a Lion. Now things have changed, much different personnel, but there's definitely similarities. Like, you see similarities. I even went back to just go watch that game through again just to kind of see. There's definitely similarities in terms of the offense that we got to see the Cardinals run, and it wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Glenn brought some of that into a game like this, just kind of the overall approach. Look, it was different personnel on both sides. We played differently, a little bit schematically in the back end especially. When you start off with the rushing attack for the Commanders, this has been statistically where they are fantastic. I showed the graphics early in the week, right? One of the top rushing teams in football. They have a very deep running back room, and that's one thing that's a staple of this offense is it's not built up of crazy depth at receiver. It's built up of running backs and tight ends, specifically Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, Bates, build it tight ends, and also the running back room, which is very deep, very involved in the passing attack. Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, McNichols. Get by the numbers, the input that Jaden Daniels also adds to this offense as a rushing threat, of course, plays into those numbers as well a ton, because Jaden Daniels is averaging 6 yards per carry this season. He has the third most scramble yards through the regular season that PFF had ever recorded, almost 600 scramble yards. So, of course, he plays into that number, maybe being a little bit inflated for them offensively, but they can definitely run the ball. To me, it's one of the more creative rushing attacks that I've seen to this point for what I expected. I don't think they have a fantastic offensive line, and I don't think they have a fantastic running back, but I do think that they are very creative. They utilize their offensive line's athleticism well. They play with a lot of great spacing, and you'll see that a lot. The offensive line splits based on kind of the run play that they're going to get to, outside zones, maybe it's a wham play, stretch, whatever that may be. You'll see different splits from their offensive linemen, so they lean into that. Then they have the creativity of constant movement with their tight end pre-snap, which adds a huge threat, especially when you throw in the run pass option element to it, where he can kind of break out into the flat. He can be a lead blocker. Their tight ends add so much to their run game. That's going to be a matchup to circle. Trevor Nowaski getting matched up with tight ends. Those guys have blocked really well. They're a huge part of this rushing attack. So much is about the moving parts that constantly happen pre-snap, and then also there's a lot of pre-snap motion. Pretty much every play seems to have a pre-snap motion attached. They'll get some fast motion involved within the run game as well, seemingly for some eye candy. So there's just a lot of creativity. There's unbalanced offensive line sets that we've seen from this team. I've seen jumbo packages from this team. So there's a lot going on within their rushing scheme, and it makes it so diverse. And I think that's what stands out when you watch them is I don't think they have the best personnel, but I think they're incredibly diverse, and they have a quarterback that can take off and help inflate some of those numbers a little bit. Now, from what I've seen, this team tends to be very balanced, especially on first down in terms of rushing the football, run and pass, very split. It does seem to lean a little bit heavier run early in games, but they can kind of catch their stretches where they'll throw it over and over on first down, or maybe they'll run it a few times in a row on first down. But they're a pretty well-balanced first down team in terms of run versus pass. Note for this offensive line, one, I don't think they necessarily do the best against slants or when you have to kick down defensive line, and maybe you bring a slot blitz to get an extra body into the picture, then they slant down as a front. I don't think reactively they're always the best offensively, because again, I think they lean into that spacing to give them some leverage and some advantages. So I don't think they always react to it the best. And then also, I don't think they necessarily have a home run hitter from what I've seen so far in the backfield. But hopefully I'm not wrong on that and they just break like an 80-yard run. I just haven't seen that. Their home run hitter is Jaden Daniels, in my opinion. I don't think they really have that out of the running back room. So in terms of scheme, I expect to see a lot of outside zone runs. Now, they have a lot of variety to this. The split zone that gets attached with their tight ends. Obviously, the zone reads that gets attached off of this. Now, their creativity can stem from that they can set up reads from different spots from Jaden Daniels. Inside zone reads, outside zone reads. They can set it up from different spots, put different guys into the action. I expect Josh Paschal to be a massive part of this because Paschal's probably going to be thrown into the mix a ton, whether that's on the play side or on the back side, crashing down the line of scrimmage, making a play on the quarterback. I expect him to be involved a ton in this game. He seems to be kind of their go-to in terms of a run scheme that they like to get to is simply going into those outside zone runs. Sam Cosmi has been one of their best offensive linemen this season. Their right guard, playing him at the guard position. He's been a really nice run blocker for them. So I think they find success behind their guards as well. Nick and Sam Cosmi, both at guard, have been pretty consistent along this offensive line. That again, I don't think it's fantastic. I think at tackle they struggle. And I think at center, forget what the grades are for a second. From what I've seen, I don't think Tyler Biadasz has been that great, at least recently. So I think along the offensive line, they're able to lean on their guards a little bit and create some movement there. And then again, they have athleticism. The zone reads are another huge aspect, as I touched on. To me, this is a good example of the usage of their tight ends within their offense and their run game. And here they're going to down block with their left tackle, and they're going to actually pull right off their tight ends here. So the tight end's going to set the edge, then they're going to lead their tight end back round. So this is actually a designed cutback run behind their tight ends. That does get blown up. Defense then wins over the tight end. We're going to have to win those matchups, but you can see the usage of their tight ends on a play like this. The variety of zone reads, I think this is where the big play potential opens because the quarterback gets involved, because you can create just outnumbering a defense if they don't react well, if they don't play it well, and especially once you throw the tight end motion into that. I mean, you constantly, the stress that puts on a second level of constantly having to have a guy, okay, now you have to work over top, now you have to scrape into that gap, because now who has a tight end? And you're constantly having to communicate all this stuff, so it's like, all right, I got to pick the tight end up, now you got to slide over, take my gap, he's going to crash down, and the constant movement there puts constant stress, and there's layers to that rushing scheme, which makes it very difficult as a defense and really stresses communication. The positive for me is here, I think the Lions have two off-ball backers that can do really well in this area, between Jack Campbell and Alex. For the most part, I think Jack's done a really nice job against these mobile quarterbacks this season in these zone read sets. I think he's done a pretty nice job for the most part there, where he's diagnosed pretty quickly. He's been pretty quick to read polars. And that's another thing, is that they'll use kind of the power read runs. They'll pull offensive linemen, that Jane Daniels work behind that. And this is a team that, from a diversity spot, because they have a quarterback like this, I mean, they'll get everywhere to speed options, triple options, quarterback sweeps in the red zone. I think everything kind of becomes amplified with the quarterback once they get really inside the 20, inside the 30 offensively with his ability to run. But I think we have the off-ball players to kind of handle this. It's just going to be about the defensive line filling the proper gaps, not getting caught on top of each other. Defensive end that gets put in the mix, which is probably going to be a lot of times Josh Pascal. Consistency there, consistency and discipline. And he's had really good moments. He's had some ugly moments too there. And of course, Trevor Nowaski may get thrown into that a little bit as well. So again, I expect to see some slot blitzing. I expect to see Brian Branch brought a few times in this game to try to create some negatives, to try to slant down the defensive line, where I don't think they've always reacted the best to that. Another run scheme that they will utilize, and we talked about the quarterback sweeps here, traps, wham runs. He's also created some explosive runs for them, especially the quarterback sweeps. But again, to me, this is where the tight end usage becomes huge. I mean, you'll see cutback lanes created off of, outside zones, but it turns into kind of like a wham look where he's cutting guys from the inside of the play to create these massive cutback lanes. They almost have like these clear out run plays where they kind of dive down an offensive line, and their cutback lanes that they create aren't even completely off the backside. They're like off the defensive tackle with their tight end. So these guys will get their nose dirty, they'll stick their nose in there, and that's what their tight ends are capable of. They're very nice blockers from what I've seen, in line especially. So for me, I think that the explosive plays can set up there. This kind of runs typically become a thing when you get two deep safety looks offensively. So that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on. If the Lions are going to a lot of two deep safety, it could open up a world of trap runs and wham runs, maybe finding a little bit more success. And all this movement, all this communication, going to stress the backers specifically. I think Jack Campbell's going to do pretty well in a game like this. I want to see what the Alex Anzalone impact kind of adds to a game like this specifically. Not necessarily the trap and wham runs, because that'll be about, well, can we get off blocks at the second level? How reactive our defense linemen. Typically, DJ Reader's pretty reactive there. If it's Levi on the interior, what does that look like? But guys like Alex, in terms of like just playing fast, but not playing so fast where we're getting kind of out of spots. Because with Jaden, it's like you can have it at first, you can have him kind of boxed in, you're like, we did it, and then he still goes out there and makes a play because he's very patient, he's calm with the ball, he's not rushing and closing his eyes. Like, you get that where it's kind of like a panic vibe. There's not that with Jaden at all. It's always like a chill vibe to him. So even if it's not there, he'll just kind of dance around and find something. He'll definitely take some shots so you can hit him when you get the opportunity, but he's got a lot of calmness to his run plays. And like I said, there's triple options that get thrown there, speed options have been thrown in there. We've seen it this season. We've seen a team in their own end zone try to speed option against us this season. The inside zone runs, to me, which is not as heavy of a staple as some of the outside stuff, I think that DJ Reader can dominate that matchup with Tyler Biotish. That's kind of my expectation. And then the counter pulls, which get utilized a little bit as well. It just speaks to the diversity that they have pulling two offensive linemen, the sweeps that they'll create off of that with the design quarterback runs as well, and even some dual runs that will get thrown in there a little bit as well, because they do have some people movers, specifically I think at the tackle position when you have a guy like Brandon Coleman that could definitely move guys. And then everything they can attach off of that, again, goes back to the RPO game where you have your bubbles, right? So if a team's playing cover 3 like I've seen this year, where it's, spot dropping cover 3, you're giving depth on the outside, RPO bubbles just kept hitting, RPO screens over and over, and it was a very heavily utilized first round strategy. It kind of feels like just an extension of the run game, which I guess it is, but if you're going to give them those looks in the back end, that's an extension of the run game, and you'll see it with their personnel. again, they're not loaded at receiver, but what they do have is guys that make things happen after the catch. They all have very clear-cut roles. Terry's like the number one guy. He's the go-win kind of guy. Zach Ertz has been their number 2 guy this season, but a guy like Zacchaeus has been outstanding with the ball in his hands. Austin Eckler's forced 13 missed tackles as a receiver this season. That's fantastic. It's top 15 in the league, so that's where they're really good, and they'll utilize that extension a ton of their run game. Now, into their passing attack, here's where I kind of have to look back at what the Lions did last time and kind of what I expect maybe to see this time, and this could be wrong. We'll see how this plays out. We want to see some movement from the Detroit Lions in the back end, but also up front, as we'll touch on here in a second. When you do watch this Washington Commanders offense, this is a team that really involves usually a pre-snap motion, and I think they get a really nice indicator of what the coverage is getting to, and Jaden Reed typically finds really good answers early on plays. Like, okay, they're going to cover 3, bam, I'm going to get the ball out. And he's very good with timing offensively, getting through his progressions typically on time. I don't think he gets caught lagging behind very often, and he can be very decisive where it's like, okay, that's the coverage going through, the ball's going there. That doesn't mean he won't miss the throw. I've seen him miss kind of easy throws, but he's very understanding of what he's seeing when he gets those looks. So I think for the Lions, we will see some real post-snap movement, but to expand on that here in a second, I think a lot of movement also needs to take place up front. Now for me, I'll just throw this out there as kind of a general rule, especially on first down. Yesterday I said this as well. Everything comes back to creating a negative on first down. You want this team in 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8. That's where the real negatives start. It doesn't mean it has to be 2nd and 15, but if you want to get sacks, if you want to get interceptions, you have to make it 2nd and long. If it's 2nd and 5, it's going to be hard to get those. Now you're playing kind of more of like the, okay, limit the big play type of deal, and now let's try to get them to 3rd down. If it's 2nd though and 9, that's where sacks have a rise for this team. That's where he's forced to hold on to the ball a little bit, and that's where we've seen bad decisions and interceptions. You see more creativity. You see a less, unique offense that becomes much more one-dimensional very quickly. That's where you want to live. If you are going to create negatives, real negatives, like big positives for your team on the defensive side, you have to make first down not positive, and a big way to do that is incomplete passes, right, or very short passes. And this is a team that heavily utilizes screens in their pass game as an extension of the run and a very quick passing attack. For me, overall, I would like to see the Lions, and we'll see how they play this. I think in general, I would like to see the Lions for the most part on first downs not giving easy access. I don't want to see the Lions just giving access because they're sitting in kind of the spot dropping zone. For the most part, I kind of hate spot dropping zones on first down against this team. We'll see if the Lions have a different plan that works better for that, or maybe they're just trying to keep everything in front. But I honestly don't think that's very effective. The games that I've went through, charting through, I just feel that teams that either playing like a version of a cover 3 match, or if they're just playing straight cover 1, it's typically been cover 3 match. But any of those versions where it's like we're mashing guys in the back end, that feels like it creates a lot more incomplete, less consistency, and the efficiency kind of flies out the window, which is to me what this team is based on. Very low turnover worthy rate plays from Jay Daniels. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way very much at all, but they play so efficient offensively. You'll get so many long drives where it's like, man, what the heck is going on here? And then the big play, which isn't even a big play. It doesn't have to be a shot. It can be. It could be a 20-yard pass, but because it's a broken play and extended, now we find someone wide open on the play. But they can really almost like lull you to sleep with just boom, 3 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. I think you have to find a way to just not give them easy access. I don't want to concede yards. Maybe we try early in some sort of zone and we try to protect that. Maybe some quarters. I think quarters has had some success if your linebackers are playing really fast. But for the most part, I would probably avoid giving them easy access on first down. I'll talk about that more here. If you are in some of those cover 1, single high coverage, man coverage, and maybe whatever variety, if that's cover 1 blitz, if that's a robber on the play, I typically like, on 3rd down, I think to have like a robber where I can kind of like shade to Terry McLaurin's side on a vertical shot, especially if they need, a pretty good amount of yards because they're probably going to take that shot. Sell out of their passing concepts and come back to like, oh, there's a vertical shot out wide. So I would lean that way and then either have a safety that's rolling down, taking away one of their deep end breakers, which is kind of another answer there, or I'd be setting up just a straight blitz off of that just to kind of hurry up the clock a little bit. But I like to have movement in that. We'll talk about that. As I talked about, there's decisive deep shots. As soon as he would recognize that it was single high safety and he was getting man coverage, he would take that shot immediately to Terry. And Terry didn't have to look open when he was throwing it. He would just put it out there. And he played with such great timing and he was getting it out so decisively and early that it just gave him an opportunity, and he would give him a chance, and a lot of times the ball would be in a really good spot where it was like, hey, he's got a chance to make a play on it. Sometimes he wouldn't because he wasn't actually open, but he would have a really good chance, and if the coverage wasn't there, you were just going to get beat over top. So that's one of the downsides for sure, is if you're doing that, you probably are going to want to shade to where every Terry McLaurin's at. He's typically out wide. You're probably going to want to help shade your safety at least somewhat in that realm, because if he's just going to play deep anyway, you might as well shade and give some help over top, because Kirby can cover that kind of ground, and if you're not giving support there, you're just going to run the risk of that being the case. De'Ami Brown would be the other threat, but still, I'd lean Terry McLaurin for sure. That leads to that even if you're blitzing, he's still going to put the ball out because it comes out so early in those spots. Also, you're going to get those deep crossers against man coverage as well. They'll run the mesh concept if it's a short yardage, right? They think they need only a few yards. They need more yards to be able to run some deep crossers off of it. I would just avoid spot dropping zones. They run a lot of screens, the RPO slants to run after catch. Everything like that opens up in spot dropping. I watched Tampa Bay run a lot of cover 2 and they'd invert it. And there was some good from that, but the problem also was, man, they were just giving them access. And it was like, oh, here's a run pass option, 18-yard slant. And you were giving them access to screen yards, and you were allowing them to stay on top of the chains constantly. I don't want them to play that game. So I would constantly have that. Now, I think there's different ways to do it. I think you can match coverage out of a cover 3 look. I think when we've done it before, we've done it against Green Bay. We did it last time at times we played this team. I think you could do it out of straight cover 1. Heck, I think you can do it out of some zone looks. Really want to force tight window throws, force them to beat me with tight window throws, because I just haven't seen enough consistency there where I think that they could beat us all day long. Like, the benefit of playing one-on-one is like, okay, yeah, we have to make tight window throws. The downside is, well, maybe we give a vertical shot. But I think that the way that balances, if I'm shading just a little bit to Terry, I think personally, if I had Terry on, say, one-on-one on the outside with De'Ami Brown, like, in general, I would love that matchup as a defense, because I think more often than not, I'm going to win that matchup as a defense, and I want to trust that my offense is going to go put up some points in this game. I think more often than not as a defense, beat me with tight window throws. I want to make that be the game that you have to play. We'll see if Aaron Glenn thinks kind of the same way about that, but that's where I'm at with it. I think it'll also help you blow up some screens, because they're not just giving them access. Hey, we're in cover 3 and he's in bail pre-snap. So even if you're going to bail pre-snap. So that leads me to the next point, where if you're going to play, and look, last time we played Arizona, we had a different personnel. We played a lot more cover 3. The Lions did a lot of post-snap safety movement, so they went into a lot of those kind of cover 3 looks with some man attached. They would kind of run both, and I think that's fine to run cover 3. I think the thing is there, I would like to see just some adjusting cornerback alignment, because they utilize that motion so much to kind of get a tell, like, let's go here with the football. I think one thing that could potentially help is just not giving them the leverage or kind of early on the play, like, yeah, he's 8 yards off, I'm just going to throw a bubble over there. Like, give me some press bail looks. Give me some different looks. If we're going to run cover 3, let's press, then let's bail at the snap, right? Let's show off coverage, let's drive at the snap. Give me some variety from the coverage alignments, from the cornerback position, to at least change the picture up, maybe to make him decide, like, I didn't love that, and then maybe hesitate the next time he comes back that direction. I think cover 4 is effective as well, much more effective than I expected. Quarters coverages against this team. The problem is this: it's very effective against a lot of their 2-man concepts, and a lot of their offense is based around 2-man concepts. It's a lot of times either a clear out concept, like 2 guys go vertical, we'll go underneath. It's a fake screen, it's a fake toss, vertical, underneath. It's a lot of that, or it's a 2-man concept. Double slants, right? Corner angle route. Like, there's a lot of that stuff, and I think that it's effective against those routes. It really helps protect the seams of the field, which I think is great, because his eyes a lot of times start there. However, the downside is your linebackers have to overlap some zones. They have to play very aggressive. If your linebackers are aggressively taking away kind of those quick spot routes, or where they'll bunch you up in a cover 4 and it's like, we want to clear out, just kind of create a quick hook route. If they race and they're taking those routes away aggressively, now this could be a very effective coverage, because again, I don't trust their offensive line up front to sustain that long, but that's the key there. And then also in that spot, it's going to be tough to kind of show like, we're going to blitz and then drop out and get to those spots. It's just probably going to throw that out the window. So cover 4 is effective if you're kind of in your base. We're off-ball linebackers, and we're flying around as linebackers at the second level. Also saw multiple teams, and we saw the Lions last time, occasionally dropping 8. Like, I don't think that's a problem either. You know, dropping a lot of guys to the coverage 1 helps you get more eyes on Jay Daniels, kind of keep him in the pocket, force him to throw it a little bit, because he does look to throw the football. Like, he's not just looking to run. He will look to throw the football. So keeping him in the pocket by that, but also on top of that, dropping 8 in the coverage has been effective as well, because I think it helps kind of take away the seams early. It can help take away like the immediate, like the quick hitch, or the quick, this quick flat. Like, let's get the ball out immediately on the play. It can kind of minimize that and force them to want to look a little bit further, because there's definitely a difference in aggression when it's level 1 versus level 2 throws, right? There's a different level of aggression when you get in forcing him to make those kind of zone window throws from what I've seen so far. Now, on second down, after, again, trying to not just give easy access on first down, on second down, I think they are much less efficient when you see the rushing numbers there from the games that I've went through, just charting it through. I think they're much less efficient rushing the ball on second down, which is something to point out. And often, if it's 2nd and 5 or less, they will look at running the football more often than not. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, these are where a lot of the 2-man concepts come into play. Your double double slants, your fade with an under route, your clear out plays. The big thing here for me is going to be the broken plays. Last time we played this team, a big thing for us was, hey, we wanted to protect against some of the vertical shot plays. Utilize play action well to pull offensive linemen. It creates problems up front, but again, he gets the ball out so fast that if he has the coverage, he's just going to put it up anyway. Because of their aggressiveness to take those kind of shots and Jaden Neal's ability to deliver those shots, I think that's one of the more difficult predictors is when are they going to try to get shot plays versus maybe in the past. But in the past, we saw in second and medium, we would typically see Aaron Glenn get to like a 2-deep look. A lot of times it was cover 6, and that has been very effective against this team because typically it forces him to just check the ball down. So if you're going to give up 6 yards on first down and it's second and medium, and you're like, hey, let's not give up the shot play because they went to that quick passing offense, which is typically what they do on first down. Now it's second and manageable. They're probably going to try to take that shot opportunity. Let's play 2 deep safeties. Cover 6 a lot of times has forced him to just check the ball down, and at very least, a lot of times it gets you into third down situations. So that's kind of a balancing game you can play. I've seen other times where lines are like, all right, we're going to show this, and they go cover 0 or something. They just bring everybody. The real key becomes the broken plays. And this is where Jaden Daniels has added an element which makes it tough to be super diverse at times, is that the element that he has added as a quarterback of, and there was a great example, he had a Tampa 2 look on the play, and he ends up getting out of the pocket, and you could see that like the outside cornerback that would have had the player that got behind him on the play, he gets pulled down by the quarterback's rushing ability and his threat, and he goes right over top of that. So the broken plays become the problem. If you're going to play 2 deep, you're going to have to stress that defensive line. Yo, we have to keep him in the pocket in these spots. It's got to be on the same page. Like, yo, if we're going to play 2 deep, we got to keep doing it in the pocket in these spots, right? We have to do that. Or we have to like, hey, we're going to blitz a slot. And I think that's a great way to do it. Like, hey, go 2 deep, but blitz somebody underneath. If it's 2nd and 5, we want to not give up the big play. Let's bring it underneath. Let's bring another player. Let's bring a blitz. We'll still play 2 deep. Let's bring a blitz on the play and just force that to kind of hurry up the process because I don't want him standing there dancing around. So either trust your D-line needs to keep him in the pocket, or you have to bring an extra rusher to hurry it up, which I would probably lean to if you still want to play 2 deep in those spots, or you just probably want to stay away from 2 deep coverage in those spots because of the fact that he does so well of extending plays. These were the kind of looks that we got around last time we played Arizona when Cliff Kingsbury was with the Cardinals. However, looks like this I think are especially fine when it's like 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10 still, because it's an opportunity to still match up in the back end even if they're trying to play to the sticks, because they're probably not trying to take a deep shot if they didn't gain anything on first down or minimal yardage, but you still match up in the back end rather than just saying, okay, we're just going to concede yards at this point. Now you continue to make them work these tight window throws if they want to throw it on 2nd and long, which they probably will. So for me, I think for the Lions, based on what they would do, they'll probably just lean on 2 deep safety. We may bring an extra rusher on some of these. Here comes Brian Branch off the slot. We'll lose an underneath defender, but we're okay with that because at the very least going to hurt the process. Gives us another guy to kind of funnel in the quarterback to the pocket. So that would be kind of my expectation there as well. I will say if the Lions try some cover 3 match, just a side note, if they're trying that, especially on early downs, you do have to be concerned for like running back screens because they can clear you out and then come back with the screen. That's just something to kind of throw out there. You can get outnumbered, and the way they utilize their screens is kind of unique. They set them up like a tunnel screen, but they don't really run it as a tunnel screen. They don't break it back inside immediately. The receivers kind of stay wide like a screen quick or like a bubble, but they still clear their entire offensive line to go kind of lead the way. So everybody typically does get involved, and they have dudes that are super comfortable with the ball in their hands. So screens, very big part of their offense, very effective part of their offense. 1-2 reads, you'll get some clear out reads. You'll maybe get a vertical shot one-on-one on the outside, and I think the deepest progression reads you'll typically see is like where you'll have kind of the deep in breakers, that kind of thing, especially on 3rd down. So in 3rd and long spots, especially if you can go to like quarters, he's much less aggressive to fit into tight windows down the field. There's a lot more kind of think that's left out there where he's like, I'm not going to take that pass. Plus, again, I don't think the offensive line holds up that well, so it's not always on him. He's just like, I'm just going to move because this isn't maybe worth the risk. So there is that. He won't force the ball into some of those windows where it's like that was tight. He doesn't seem to be willing to like let that thing go on some of the 3rd downs. A little more hesitancy there. So 6+, like 3rd and 6+ for me, that's 3rd down and 6+. I think that's clearly the world you want to live in because then it just comes back to contain the guy because scramble becomes a part of it. We all know about the aggression that people have talked about, which they're great on 4th down. They're great. They're not as aggressive in terms of attempts, but they're great on 4th down to like middle of the pack there. But they're great because of his legs. And they don't do a lot of things I think special, right? They'll do some up tempo. They'll do it when they get into positive territory. If they're across the 50, they're probably looking to go for it on 4th down. If they're across the 50, it's a 4th and 4. I've seen them go for it. So usually it's in better spots to go. It's not like, hey, 4th and 9 from our own 10, we're going for it. Like they don't do nothing crazy like that. But if they're in plus territory, I think their aggression to go for it does crank up a bit. Have them in third and shorter situations defensively. One thing for me is if you're going to play man coverage in those spots, obviously I think that Cliff's going to come in with a plan, be like, hey, okay, I know that this is what I was going to get, so I'm going to have a plan to beat this. One thing that I have seen that they typically would use is like stack routes. They would stack 2 routes together, and they would try to create rub routes off it. Also run like across the board, like 1, 2, 3 reads, so it's like double slants or like triple angle routes, and you can just like work through it one by one, just because they're working at different depth levels. It kind of makes the process a little bit easier. So they'll do things like that. And then you'll also get kind of your mesh concept. For me, what I like, if you went to like zone, they'll use their bunches and they'll try to overload a spot of the zone. They'll try to create spacing. They'll try to get the ball out fast and kind of create just kind of like windows by like clear out, we'll come back underneath. Clear out, we'll come back underneath. The longer situations, again, you're probably either get a vertical shot on the outside or some like deep in-breaking route. And Ertz a lot of times becomes the threat there. So for me, what I like to do is, especially on third and short, I want to stack the line of scrimmage. I want to create confusion up front. I don't think they handle simulated pressure very well at all from what I've seen. That creates the most mishaps where it's like, hey, you don't even need to blitz them. Just bring 4, but you don't know which 4 you're bringing. Somebody drops out. So I would absolutely use that just to cause a mess on their offensive line. And their response has been like, oh, design rollouts, that kind of thing. They've always had that little option, but I would still do it, especially on third down. I would absolutely use some simulated pressure looks. I'd stack the line of scrimmage. And as you can see on a play like this, with the simulated pressure look, it leads to an interception where you could just make it foggy and also create pressure that there's just nowhere to go on a play like this. And I would also look at coming in and showing man and getting to zone. Just because the expectation is going to be man, the expectation I assume is going to be like what are our man beaters. I would show man, I would stack the line, and I would jump to zone. I don't think zone's a problem at all, right? I'd rather make him throw into some tight windows where it's not the first obvious read if he believes that this is man coverage. If I can do that, I think that ultimately you're winning as a defense, right? So that's what I would do. I would do that. I want to cause confusion for this offensive line. When they get to the red zone, what's so great is like the rest of their offense, they're super decisive. I do think that it's a must that you kind of switch routes, not like how we played Minnesota where we didn't switch anything for the most part unless it was zone. Man or zone, I think it's important to switch routes because, again, they'll run concepts like the China 7 concept, right? So they'll do things like that to kind of create openings. So I would switch everything. I would do the same thing on third down, honestly, as well, where I'm kind of switching everything. That way you can't just run those 2-man concepts on me. Same thing with red zone is kind of the same thing on third down, even in man. Like, I'd be very willing to kind of switch off and pass off everything just so that way when they kind of cut the field in half and like these two are going to do this and you're going to pick the one, I would make sure that I'm switching that. That way they just can't have easy leverage. Like, oh, there's a stack. He's wide open. I'd be very willing to switch things. And then from a pressure perspective, go at the left side of the offensive line. I think Za'Darius could have a big game like this. I don't trust either of their tackles that much, especially Coleman from what I've seen recently. And I don't think that their running back is great in pass pro either, specifically Brian Robinson. So for me, I think the Lions have an advantage on the defensive front. With all their injuries, I think they have an advantage to getting after this guy on the defensive front. We just have to get them in the spots to do that. Now, when you flip it to the other side of the ball, this Lions offense going at this Commanders defense, statistically, they're not great really anywhere here outside of like pass defense because they don't have a lot of pass attempts against them. Second lowest in football, so that's really good and know who they are. And I think they're pretty straightforward. Now, they are a smart defense, and this is one thing where we have seen them be adaptable. We've seen them be adaptable in personnel against Philly. They use more base personnel. We've seen them use more 2-deep coverage against Philly because, like, hey, that's kind of where they struggle. So they're not the same team every game, and there definitely could be some wrinkles where, like, in a game like this, who knows? Maybe they come out with like a Minnesota play and like, yo, we're going a lot more 2-deep safety. We want them to prove they can run. We're not giving up explosives in the pass game. Like, that could be their plan. I would be intrigued to see it. I would also expect blitzing. They're a high blitz rate team. I would expect blitzing. I would expect when we go into center, they're going to be bringing extra guys. They're going to want to make every play action set as uncomfortable as possible. I would just expect from their defensive line that they're not going to want to let us get comfortable plays. I would think that's the one thing he's trying to do. So just our own self-scout. If we're going under center, expect they're going to blitz heavy. That's where Monty coming back is huge. That'd be my expectation. And maybe we get some more 2-deep safety looks, especially on early downs. Maybe we get more of that in this game than what they typically would do. But as for the run game, for me, I just don't think they have necessarily the personnel up front across the board. Now, not having Zeitler stinks, and Mahogany's in there for this game. Hopefully he plays really well. It's a great opportunity. But it stinks for this game specifically because, number one, I think the most consistency offensively comes from the outside zone. And I love that because I think that's when we have that rolling, we're at our best as a rushing attack. When we have the outside zone rolling and we lean into that, which is kind of who we are, we're at our best as a team. Now, I don't know the Mahogany's the best here. I think he's a great puller. I think he's a great gap scheme player. But I think as a zone as a whole, as a unit, that's where we're at our best. And I think the most consistency I've found for teams rushing against them is outside zone attacks. I don't think they have the DNs across the board. I don't think they have the depth. I think Holmes, guys like Holmes at defensive end are just an inconsistency. You can kind of go at guys like Fowler, I just don't think they have the consistency in the rotation at defensive end or even on the interior to a point. A guy like Jonathan Allen hasn't been very good this year. Dude's only played 300 snaps. I mean, a lot of times, like, where is he? He's only played 300 snaps this year. They do have some flash players. Payne can obviously make plays. Newton's come on where he's made some real big-time plays against the run. Days occasionally made some plays as well. And I think it's most consistent because it slows down their backers a little bit. I think what makes their backers so tough is especially Bobby Wagner. He's been excellent. He is really tough. He sheds blocks incredibly well. Gap scheme or man scheme, he could be much more like, okay, there's a guy coming to block me, and he avoids those blocks, and he's being so decisive. Like, he's making very quick reads and his mind up very fast. So maybe you can get him to bite or like get him on some kind of like movement pre-snap or you get him to bite on something because he is so decisive, but he's playing really fast right now. So I think the outside zone can find consistency. If we do some of the duo, like let's get downhill type of runs, if Mahogany's having that work out, I would go right at Daron Payne. I think I would go right at Daron Payne. I'd go at Day a little bit. Even though Day can play a little small and find some success, I'd go at those guys. I feel good about that matchup. Clearly the most explosive run type against this team, and probably the best results that I have, are toss plays. Pin, pull looks, toss plays. Those are the big plays that you create here. And with Gibbs, I love this. I would do it with Monty a few times too. That way they're not expecting it. Like, I would be cool with rotating those. But I love this because, one, I want Bobby Wagner to have to play sideline to sideline. That's not that he can't, because he definitely can. But him and Luvu, who are going to be responsible for inside gaps that are aggressive to step down into their gaps. Oh, I got the B gap. He's aggressively stepping down. I want them that are responsible for inside gaps to have to get sideline to sideline and then have to redirect off of that. I just haven't seen the consistency there. I don't think, again, they have the consistent edge rusher piece to like, oh man, I'm stopping this in his path. Like, I don't think they have that. So for me, I'd be very willing to say, let's get some toss plays. I think that's where your biggest runs can come from based on what I've seen. Traps and whams are effective, of course, against two deep safeties, especially if they're coming out on that early. May look to it a little bit more to getting into that. I think the inside zones have been less effective. I think that you just create a mess there with Bobby Wagner and Luvu sticking their nose in. They just kind of create a mess between all of that. I think stretch runs, especially when they go to some of their 5-1 fronts, they start to stack the line because they play a lot of 3-3-5. They play a ton of nickel. They'll use Jeremy Chin a lot to step down against run because they play 82% of the time single high safety this season. They're stacking the line. Stretch runs are effective against them in those spots. But yeah, Wagner, fast eyes, great shed ability, and he's been a real problem for tight ends trying to block one-on-one in the man scheme. So again, speaking of tight ends, circle our tight ends against those backers. Now, in the passing attack, speaking of the backers, Frankie Luvu is the guy with circle. Anytime they're in zone coverage, he's the guy you got to circle. You got to look that guy off. You can't, like, look at a route, stand on a route, hope the concept clears it. He will jump something. He'll pick it off. He's made some ridiculous plays in coverage. I'm like, I didn't know he was about that life. He's about that life. So he's the guy that I circle in zone coverage. He has great positioning. He reads concepts well, and he's got real change of direction ability. But I still always believe that we can go at Bobby Wagner, especially in a game like this. I want to put him in the action. I know they pass everything off over the middle of the field. I want to put him in the action. I want to make him change directions. I want to wear this dude out. And I think with Gibbs, we can wear this dude out. So I clearly love that battle. I would love to see that play out. And I'd love to see him make him work there, whether that's toss plays or even a little bit in the pass game as well, because I want to make him change direction. I want to make him like, oh, I followed this. Now I got to pass it to you. I got to pass this overball route. Now I got to take the running back out of the backfield. Like, I want to make him make that work. They're average across the board in man zone rates. About 70% of the time they're playing zone coverage. When you look at their personnel, they aren't graded that well, but I think they play really well in the back end together. They have a really smart back end. Noah Igbenogany has been their slot. He's a physical corner. He obviously can run. He can absolutely run. He's a great athlete. I think that he's very handsy, though, and that's where you can kind of get him is like right off the release. So if he gets St. Brown, that's something to watch for because he can keep up with him. Technician side of Saint that's very willing to deal with the physicality could be an awesome matchup. I'm excited to see how that would play out if that's a matchup that we do get. I think that a guy like Mike Sainer still really struggles at the top of the route to sustain and you know, kind of stay lashed in some of those spots in coverage. So for me there, I just think that you see it from a consistency spot. Probably the most inconsistent player that I've seen in their back end in terms of just being in guys' hips throughout a rep. Is, however, a very smart player. So if you're just trying to like create designs that like peel them off and somebody's wide open, he's overlap coverage, he's jump routes. He obviously has big time, he has ball skills as well. His problem is just terms of get him in a one-on-one, isolate him one-on-one, and attack him. Plus, I want to question his long speed a little bit as well when he has to play out wide like he is. He's playing out wide. If you get J-Mo and Mikey one-on-one and they don't have a safety directly over top, I'm at very least getting one shot on that. At very least, I'm taking one and Bob on that just to see what the heck happens. I need to do that at least one time. And Lattimore has really struggled versus Brown and Evans. Right? Both those games that I had watched, he struggled in both of those one-on-one. I think they have any really great matchup piece in the back end, but they're a smart back end. He's obviously a veteran type of player that you could just see it right there. There's some struggles with really clean route running. I don't know how often we'll attack Lattimore unless we get St. Brown in that matchup, but what I would do is get a guy like Khalif Raymond in that spot where he's got to work off-man coverage. He's got to deal with stacks, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, but short motions, fast motions, where I can get him to have to stack and back off in coverage. Maybe they're one of their match looks. When I can get him there, and then he's got to deal with Khalif Raymond with all that kind of speed and the change of direction in and out of cuts, that's where I think you can go at him. I don't know that's going to be like a consistent, like, oh, just match him up and we'll just have somebody cook him. I don't think that'll be the case. I don't think we're really built like that, but in that spot, I do like that matchup. And then finally, Jeremy Chin has been pretty inconsistent all year. 118 pass rating allowed. He's a freaky athlete, but he's been inconsistent, and I love me some Sam Laporta, so I'll always trust that, especially in a matchup like this. I think he has an advantage there. So from a coverage perspective, again, they're a very heavy single high team, especially on first down. A lot of cover one, a lot of cover three. And when they're in cover one, again, matchups on the outside I just touched on there. Go at Mike anytime you get a one-on-one for a consistency spot. Probably going to be your most consistent guy to win. Go at Mike Sanders still. I love layered routes against their cover one look specifically. Layers over the middle of the field. They're passing things off over the middle. Give them a level 1 and then a level 2 layer route, right? Give them things like that. Give them stacks that create layers. And I love the pre-snap motion. I love Khalif on the fast motion. JMO, I love getting guys in that spot in a game like this, in that matchup. They also play a lot of cover 3 match coverage as well. A lot of times they attach this with their blitz, again, on first down. So they're going to attach like, okay, we're matching up, we're playing 3 match, and then we're going to blitz on top of it. A lot of times just a straight 5-man rush. You're constantly having to deal with that. It's where they pass off kind of everything over the middle of the field. Those level 1 throws between Bobby Wagner, he kind of just surveys the middle of the field and he passes everything off that kind of comes his way. So for me, that's where I want to make him work. I want to make him like chase somebody and then have to drop it off and then chase somebody else the other direction, especially with gives. I would absolutely make them work if they're trying to sit in that coverage.
This is one of my favorite designs here. Using a 3-by-1 set offensively, they're going to have the 2 clear out routes at the bottom and then just run the deep out underneath, forces the free safety to pick it up, and now he's out leveraged on the play as they have to carry the 2 routes vertical in a match coverage.
High-low setups where you can just kind of attack the leverage, like, okay, outside corner, if we get him, from a tighter alignment, we can get the outside corner to give some cushion, and then we can kind of work that high-low setup. Speed in the slot against cover 3 match as well, because those guys have to race vertical. I would be willing to say, like, okay, we get Khalif in the slot, or we get JMO in the slot, that kind of thing. Plus, their free safety, Quan Martin, tends to be a little bit aggressive. He's another guy that seemingly is typically stepping up rather than stepping back. He's someone that if you get him, you can absolutely get behind that piece. So I think a lot of things are there for the making of we should be able to get at least 1 vertical shot unless things change in terms of how they play this. But if they don't, I would absolutely make them pay for that. Still make sure the Lions utilize a lot of play action in this game. That is very effective. Even out of shotgun, use play action, right? Make these guys step down, help open up the middle of the field, help pry the middle of the field, which can be a little bit tough to get into because they constantly attach to the blitz along with their 3-match coverage. Utilize things like beneath routes, right? Where they have to communicate it and then pass it off, but then they have to deal with their run responsibility. But then if they're blitzing, they don't have a guy to pick it up. Obviously, you can create negatives. There's a downside there, but it can also create just like wide open routes where you have someone working beneath the line of scrimmage and they just don't pick it up. Maybe get a rollout and a throwback play, things like that. That kind of thing where they have to pass it off with their blitzing, it creates real issues. And then again, the motions that I talked about to get him matched up with Lattimore or Mikey one-on-one, I think that would be great. Typically, the 2 coverages you'll see on first down, there's some spot dropping in there, but typically those are the 2 coverages you will see. So they're kind of just matched up regardless across the board. And then you'll get a little bit of cover 4, and if they kind of lean into that against us, I like to work at Bobby Wagner. I like to work right by his ear. You have to look it off, but I want to make him work in coverage. That'd be a guy I'd like to kind of go at a little bit there. And then again, you can kind of get those matchups on the outside with potential double moves and speed outs. Those guys are struggle a little bit at the top route to mirror match. And I think with guys like JMO, there could be a real struggle there.
Especially when you see a cover 4 play like this. First off, the safety position, you can see that you could potentially get behind a guy like Martin on a play like this. You can also see how the dagger could absolutely open up. They wouldn't be able to pass this thing off with the backside safety. And if you could attach any sort of play action to this, getting the backer to step down, maybe in the safety's eyes, a vertical shot, an in-breaker, you can see the potential success against this coverage.
Second down and 6+. Typically, this is where you'll get like some of those Tampa 2 looks. That starts to mix in a little bit. You'll get some inverted looks there as well. You'll get some more creativity and kind of like, all right, let's play a little bit umbrella over top here. But a majority in these spots in second and long is going to be the quarters coverage and also, again, that cover 3 match defense that we do get to see. I would run some outbreakers. I think that you can have kind of those long developing routes on the outside, kind of like the Josh Reynolds special, right? Your post corner routes, your deep outbreakers, things like that where you can just isolate someone one-on-one on the outside. I think that's a great matchup. But again, make the backers work in that spot and then try to get something vertical. You can put speed in the slot, even from this as well. These safeties trying to press up a little bit. I have to be a little creative with how you set it up, but if you could set up like one of our, our play action sets where it's like, all right, play action, we're going here, and we play action steps, we're going here, and then we throw a screen back this way, or we fake a screen this way, we come back and throw the screen the opposite way. Just little wrinkles like that to just get the flow one way, force these backers to change direction with two deep safeties. That could absolutely open up run after catch if we're just looking for easier answers in those spots. That could definitely be an easier answer for the Lions there. Then when it comes to third down, they are a pretty heavy cover one team in these spots, so you do get a lot of straight man-to-man coverage. There's variety to it. They will drop out 8 into coverage, or they'll blitz. A lot of variety in that sense. There's like, hey, we're going to drop the 8, or there's like, hey, we're just going to blitz on the play. But there's a lot of cover one. It's very much so typically what they get to in man coverage, like creating layers right over the middle of the field against this team. We've seen teams do it. Doesn't mean it has to be a mesh necessarily, but just creating some sort of layers over the middle of the field, those in breakers, things that are crossing the face, and then, kind of taking the free safety out of the play a little bit there. But I like creating those layered concepts, or again, back to the original point, the stacks, the rubs that you can create. You can kind of isolate two guys outside wide off of that. Other wrinkle would be they get some quarters coverage when they're in third down as well. They'll go to some cover forward. They'll just play more aggressively to the sticks. So that could be an opportunity to go deeper than the sticks because they're going to try to play the sticks in those spots. But it's also a great opportunity to be like, let's run the football. You want to play cover 4? We're going to run the ball. You want all this movement? We're going to run the ball in one of these spots. We know the Lions not afraid to do that. They're very willing to do that. In the red zone, I think that what makes them tough here is there is creativity based on alignment. So there's combo coverage that's very, very relevant here, which is like one side will be cover 3, the other side's cover 1. There's real combination coverage that gets involved here. The positive to that, it can be a little bit straightforward. Like, okay, we got the man side. Let's just run a beater there. I feel like we can win those routes on that side. Zone cover side would be a little more difficult to attack. That's been the toughest spot. Red 2 coverage, they run that pretty well as well in the red zone, which is just cover 2, but you kind of play with more depth for your corners. Like, those are a little bit tougher to find answers, specifically in the back end. And their linebackers, they kind of clog up the middle of the field. So maybe work some underneath routes, make those guys tackle in space, make the linebackers get out in space and go make a play if they're going to sit in some of those full zone looks defensively. But I would come out with some real unbalanced formations to try to get some of the combination setups to then set up a man side where I could just pick a side and find a way to just create a win there. Pressure perspective, where they cause problems is they don't create a high pressure rate, but they do blitz a pretty heavy amount. It's from their linebacker position. Their linebackers will blitz, especially Frankie Louvo. I think he's a very good blitzer. And because their linebackers will blitz, their edge rushers will drop. And that flexibility, I think, plays a lot to their strengths. Bobney and Frankie are very comfortable as blitzers on the inside, but their edge rushers as well are very comfortable dropping out. Like guys like Fowler, they're athletic enough to do it. So that's where I think the blitzing becomes the threat, is that the interior, they can cause immediate pressure from the interior. So running backs are going to have to be good stepping in, and they're probably going to go at Mahogany. My guess is, seeing that Zeitler's out, if they're looking at it, like one, you can already kind of go at the left side a little bit with Glasgow. They're also going to look at the right side like, hey, it's a rookie. That's the guy that we have to make work. So with interior blitzing, we're probably going to have some breakdowns there, just throwing it out there. So a guy like Monty or Gibbs, those guys are going to be massive, stepping in there, helping us get a little extra time because there will be blitzing. And I'm assuming, again, with how much they blitz on first down anytime under center, I would expect some sort of blitz and maybe even some cornerback blitzing because they're going to want to really hurry us up. They're going to want to cause negatives. I think the good teams don't want us comfortable in where we want to be comfortable, which is play action. So teams bring extra rushers. So I just assume that's going to be the case. But based on the way they play coverage, I think it lays out to be a game where this Lions are very comfortable. Clearly, they should be able to run the football in this game. I think they will be able to run the ball pretty well in this game. And I think that lays out as, okay, single high coverage, and we should be able to run the football. It lays out as a game where the Lions can kind of play the game style they want to play, right? They can play the style they want to play. The problem will be is that they have opportunistic players in the back end. So where is the balance? That'll be something to watch for. What's the balance between Lions' big plays versus their big plays? Where does the balance fall in there? That'll be a key to circle. Oh, there's a breakdown at the second level. So now all of a sudden, Jahmyr Gibbs got out wide and they didn't even pick him up and picked up 40 yards on a swing route. That'll happen. But they also have the guys that can take the ball away. Need that balance, I think, to shake in their favor. Big plays versus turnovers. They need that balance to shake in their favor to win this game defensively. So that'll be the thing that I'd look for. Kind of mark explosive offensive plays versus big plays defensively.
Another extension that I would like to see from the Lions are potentially those little swing passes to their back, setting up screens that way to Gibbs. Like another way to kind of peel these backers out, push up vertically based on their man or match coverage. It's a good opportunity to get a linebacker to have to work out into space. And again, it's an efficient play that would keep the Lions from putting the ball in harm's way, but allowing their guys to just work after the catch in space.
That'll be the thing they need to roll their favor. And I think aggressiveness will be the way that maybe they try to lean into that, or maybe they don't. But I would assume that they would, because I don't think they're going to want to play on their heels against us in this game. I just just don't think that makes sense necessarily unless their offense just controls time of possession and the Lions can't get off the field. But knowing Glenn, he's not going to be playing on his heels at all. So I think that'll be kind of how we see this thing play out. So with that being said, my score prediction for this game as of now is Lions 28, Commanders 17. I got the Lions by 11 in this game. I think that, hopefully we get the ball, we go down, we score. I think if we win the toss, wouldn't shock me. The Lions are like, yeah, let's take the ball first, let's go score. And I think you just have to get them off their efficient track offensively. I think we have the personnel to go win this football game. I think we definitely have the personnel across the board. And I think that Aaron Glenn is a really good coach for a game like this. I think he's a really good coach for a matchup like this. But we'll see how it plays out because Jaden Daniels has been great. But I am pretty comfortable with this. I think we've been preparing, having to deal with mobility of quarterbacks taking off, plastering lid on plays. We've been prepared for this, and I don't think that I see right now enough consistency in terms of like making plays that are just like not exactly 100% there, but they could be there. I don't see enough of that from the Washington Commanders offense outside of just vertical shots. I don't see enough of that. Like, oh, they're gonna dice us up on 3rd and 14 when we're in a zone. They're gonna find these tight windows. Like, I just don't trust that enough consistently. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 of those plays, but I don't think they'll have enough for them to put up enough points. So I'm going 28-17 Lions in this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Brad, for watching, and I'm out.